Hello and welcome back to another episode of Uncontested Investing. Thrilled to be here. I'm your host, Nate Zielinski, joined by co-host Suzanne and I.
Happy to be here, Nate.
Yeah, today we're going to wrap up our financing and funding discussion with how to use private money loans effectively. So some of the things we're going to talk about today are, why are they attractive for investors, where to find the right private lender, and a lot of do's and don'ts as it pertains to the entire process of using these loans effectively if you're an investor. Where do you want to start, Suzanne?
Let's start with why they're attractive.
I think the most important thing to remember as an investor is the potential for customization and then the fast track to success. When you're working with a private lender, you don't always have to take the deal that's presented to you as an investor. You can really customize the terms, work them in your favor, see what options are out there. Always be asking questions when you're working with a private lender. Rarely, if ever, is a loan with a private lender an open and shut case. As an investor, the control is in your hands, so use it wisely.
Well, I think, in this space, every acquisition is unique, and so should every loan process be. And for the newer investors, I think your perception is that you're in the subservient position to the lender, and you're not. You have the right to develop the loan and the process that works for you, that fits with what your acquisition strategy is. So don't be afraid to challenge, your funding partner and do these terms work? Do the rates work? What are some of the things that you need to make this a successful transaction?
Yep. And I think most private lenders will respond to that positively. They realize that somebody is taking this seriously. They know their stuff when it pertains to the industry, and they can really grow a relationship together. If you talk to an account executive, a loan officer, and you're working through all types of scenarios for this loan, as a loan officer, a light bulb goes off in their head and say, oh, we have somebody that's serious here. If I can nail this first transaction with them, then I could potentially get repeat business. So if you put yourself in a position where you can come off as educated, come off as somebody that's willing to go the extra mile and take the initiative on these deal processes, it can only benefit you in the long term.
Well, it shows that you've done your due diligence, your homework.
Yep.
You're coming at this as a business practice. It's not a whim. And you're fully buying in. You need them to fully buy in and support you as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice. If you're looking to work with a private lender, before you even discuss any deal scenario, always schedule a call ahead of time. Ask them what the checklist looks like. What kind of documents do I need? What kind of requirements are there for me to be able to take a loan out with you guys in terms of qualifications? There's so many things that you can do ahead of time that when that first deal hits the table, you're off and running with that private lending company.
Well, and if you look at, the past 5 or 7 years from where we are today, the evolution of funding is dramatically different than it has been. There's all types of products that have been added to it. But even, and let's talk about social media in that spectrum. That, today's market, you can find an answer to anything. And if you're looking at this partner and you think you've selected it, do your homework. Look, do little questions on what is their customer service like online? Are they, supportive? Were they able to close that loan in 4 days when all of a sudden it became a crunch time? Could they jump through a hoop at the same time they've asked you to jump through a hoop?
Yep.
It's a quid pro quo kind of transaction. And always look at it that way. It's a partnership. Don't be afraid to ask, but don't ask too much consistently just because you want to get something in return.
Yeah, investors can get in that mindset, you're right, of I need this private lender desperately. But really it's a mutually beneficial relationship because they need you to keep bringing them deals to keep the lights on. And obviously they have more borrowers at their disposal than just a single investor, but it does matter. That business does matter. Check out those Google reviews. As you mentioned, that's a powerful tool. Are they willing to go the extra mile? Through your networking connections, do they get a positive review? Is it word of mouth how you found out about them? If somebody's willing to take time out of their day and tell you about a specific private lender without you having to do research, that matters, right? If they're willing to put their name to this lender and swear by doing business with them. Social media, you mentioned, what is their presence like on social media? Are they educational by nature? Are they someone that you can see yourself working with? What does their follower base look like? Sometimes a follower base can tell you a lot about how many people actually work with them. And then there's real estate groups. Always tap into those local connections, as we've been mentioning in these past few videos. What are your recommendations? If you have a room full of 15 people and 4 or 5 come back with the same private lender, you might be onto something there.
Well, and so here's your loan officer's not going to get paid until it closes. Mm-hmm. So they are your advocate to make this come together. Yeah. But at the same time frame, And we presume that no one's doing a one-off transaction, be one and done, and leaving the space. So as you turn around and try and develop this partnership, develop the relationship with your loan officer in a positive way. They're not a doormat.
Yep.
They're not going to jump through a hoop for you if you treat them that way.
Yep.
Strong-arming them and being disrespectful isn't going to get you anywhere.
Yeah.
But if you develop the partnership and your loan officer really believes in what you're saying and wants you to be, they'll go to bat for you and try and ask for that question, and make this come together, because again, they don't get paid until this closes. They want to work with you, but you got to be, it's a partner.
Yeah. Coming in with the right attitude goes a long way to using private money loans effectively, as we've been mentioning here, right? Because that relationship is the most important you may be able to have in your entire investment career. The person that is closing the loans, going to bat for you with their underwriting team, their treasury team, asking for exceptions, reworking term sheets. They put in a lot of hours to make sure a deal goes through. So treating that person with the right amount of respect and the right attitude can be a game changer for investors.
It does. It goes a long way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think going back to some of the benefits, right, it's the faster approvals, the flexible terms. Really, though, it's avoiding the red tape on the other side. So if you're going to use these loans effectively, really, as an investor, you have to look in the mirror and understand the potential is there, but it's really on me. I have to put in a lot of work. I have to find these properties. I have to do my due diligence. But private lenders can make it a lot easier, but it takes a lot of work from the investor on the onset.
Sure, it does. And I think if you start your homework in advance of even before you find the property, figure out what's necessary. What is the paperwork necessary to get a loan through the process? Understand that lender's process, understanding what documentation you need to bring to the table. Start collecting that. Have it all ready to go. So when you find that property, and time is money,
Yep.
Rates change every day.
Yep.
They don't always go down.
Yeah, no, that's super important. As we mentioned, that document checklist, right? If I want to submit this loan to a private lender and I want this deal to hit the ground running, what do they need from me? I can't tell you how many times, even just being perpendicular from the loan process and eventually sending them on to loan officers, how much email tag can be perceived as time wasting, right? They send a deal. Can you guys do this? Okay, but to do that, we need to figure out X, Y, and Z. They only bring back X and Y. Okay, these look good, but we still need this piece of information. So if you can come to the table with all your ducks in a row, it gets that deal process started on the right foot, and you're closing a lot faster than expected.
And getting the rate that you want versus waiting for the next rate on the table, which may or may not be in the right direction.
And I think that's part of the education process as you're vetting these lenders and making sure this is the right fit for you and using them effectively, is asking questions like, what are some of the prepayment penalties? Does this gel with my vision as an investor? Is this going to hinder me? Can I customize the prepayment penalty period? What do the interest rates look like? Can I pit this lender against the other one? Can I buy down the rate? If I have more experience, what can I aspire to get the lowest interest rate? All these requirements and questions are extremely important to keep in mind as an investor, because this is really the gateway to your success. Establishing a positive relationship with a private lender and having that repeatable process is how you become successful.
Sure. And then from there, how do you collateralize your portfolio? There's things that you can do that you may or may not understand. And that's really the benefit of having that upfront conversation with your loan officer. Like, hey, I have 6 assets. Here's where I am in all of these. Here's where I sit on these assets. And what does that do for me in this next acquisition?
Yep.
Because, that's, that may help you buy a very different asset also.
Yeah.
You may be able to get the 2-family instead of the single. There's some things so figure out what your plan is and how to get there.
Yeah, being proactive as an investor is important. And we spent some of these past few episodes in the financing and funding series talking about red flags, but that is a green flag to let you know that you may have found the right private lender. If your loan officer is going above and beyond and asking that question before you can even ask it, how many properties do you have in your portfolio? What other investment opportunities are you looking to get into? If they're the ones interviewing you, that's how you know you've found the right one, because they want to be proactive. They want to work with you. They want to close more deals. Obviously, it's beneficial for them, but take them up on that offer. Let them educate you. Let them tell you about all the ins and outs of the industry. And if you have somebody that's willing to do that for you as an investor, keep that contact in mind and allow them to help you reach the next level.
But think about the next transaction. You go through and you fly through this first one, and now you have the whole next one. They already know that you're serious, and now you've shown them, that not only you're serious, you finish this loan and this whole process cycle faster than expected. You were a good risk to them.
Yes.
So that's the next. So now you're building your reputation as much as they're building theirs.
Yep. As an investor, you really want to, focus on what you're working on, your portfolio, your properties, what you have to manage. But you can really think of it as a leaderboard. If you're working with a private lender and you send them 10 deals in a month and, 4 or 5 of them close, that's a pretty successful month. That loan officer is now waiting for your next email, waiting for your next call. So if you're able to produce, close loans fast with them, be on the same page, have everything organized, you're moving up that leaderboard. You become a priority customer and you get the next level of customer service and so on and so forth. So always keep that in mind as an investor. It is important to water your own grass and take care of your portfolio. But at the end of the day, at a private lending company, it can be a competition, and the best investors and the most successful or repeat business investors rise to the top.
Well, and you've proven your track record too. Yeah. You're not as big a risk as you were the first day you walked through the door.
Yeah.
And know that and value what you've achieved as the investor. You've done right by yourself, which is also by right on behalf of the lender. And they're more than happy to welcome you back again for a second visit.
Yeah. And I think there's 3 important benchmarks when you're working with a private lender that most, if not all, consider, right? It's cash flow of the asset is very important. It's credit history and it's experience. So if you're able to rack those up, if you have cash flowing properties, your credit history is getting better and better because you're paying off these loans, and now you have more experience, you're going to be able to use these private loans more effectively and get the best terms and interest rate possible. It only gets better the further along you go in your investment career. So that's why I think it's really important to go back to that conversation of vetting these private lenders, figuring out what their reward system is or how it can get beneficial for you over time, and really hone in on 1 or 2 lenders so you can reap those benefits. If you're sending, 30 deals to 25 different lenders, you're really leaving a lot on the table in terms of potentially, as we talked about, forging those relationships and reaping the benefits of repeat business.
And it's okay to have a couple lenders. Don't have 5.
Yeah.
Yep. Two, maybe 3, but make it a family. And you don't have to spread it out. That's not your risk aversion. You're actually reducing your partnership strategy versus risk aversion.
Yep.
I think that's a very different way to look at it.
And at the end of the day, that can start to be a headache for you as an investor. That's 5 different sets of guidelines that you have to remember, 5 different document checklists. You really run the risk of overworking yourself or overstretching what you're capable of if you're spread too thin.
Focus on what you're good at.
Yep.
Lending's not your forte.
Yep.
The investment is.
And focus on what other people are good at. So if there's other successful investors in the industry, always reach out to them. Always be networking. Who have you used for your past 10 deals? What does that breakdown look like? Who do you send 90% of your deals to as an investor? If those successful investors, and most of them are willing to impart that wisdom and share what's made them successful, start using that company. They've become successful for a reason, and finding the right private lender is one of those reasons.
Well, and their loan officer, you say, hey, call my loan officer, Joe. He's been really good to me. Yep. And all of a sudden you're like, hi, Joe. Nate told me to call. Yep. Well, now Nate gets a gold star next to his name also. And it's all part of the partnership.
Yeah, and I think that works perfectly hand in hand, right? If you yourself as an investor are in a position where you've struck gold and found the right lender, you should be sharing that to everybody that you know. Get that referral business. Again, the loan officer will remember, oh, wow, you've referred me so much business. I'm going to go the extra mile because of all the people that you've introduced me to and added to my pipeline.
And you get a quick look at it. You go to the top of the pile.
Yep.
Because you're actually the reason why the whole pile's there.
Exactly.
You get to sit on top.
Exactly. And then, I think there also is worth having a conversation about setting up an LLC. A lot of these private lending companies will only lend to an LLC. But as an investor, you really want to have that extra level of protection. And it's how you use private lending effectively, right? If you already have that set up, now you can move along in the process quicker. But instead of the private lending institution attacking you personally, you have that LLC set up as a barrier. So just another tidbit of information. If investors are considering working with private lenders, I think that's an important place to start. That may be step 1, along with setting up the calls to figuring out guidelines and best practices. having that LLC, because one of the first questions a loan officer may ask you is, do you have an LLC set up? That's where we need to start, really. So having that taken care of and checked off the list is important.
Well, it shows you're prepared for risk aversion. Also, that you're not, you've got your head on, you're in the game, and you're trying to go about it the right way.
Yes. So let's take a quick break there. We'll be right back to wrap up our financing and funding conversation and using private money loans effectively.
Putting the fun in funding.
REI Inc. is the premier monthly publication for real estate investors. Dive into a wealth of expert insight and strategies from industry leaders and gain valuable regional market insights, ensuring you always have the best information at your fingertips. Visit rei-ink.com to elevate your real estate investment game today.
Welcome back to our final episode of the Financing and Funding series. We're talking today about using private money loans effectively. And Suzanne, we want to wrap it up with some of the big takeaways of our overall discussion. What do you think is most important for investors to take from our conversation?
So I think the biggest thing, and this is going to be geared towards some of the smaller investors, the biggest thing that we can share with you today in the funding strategy is that you have flexibility. Don't go in there afraid to ask for changes in the loan structure. It has to work for everybody. Just because you're new at this, you're not a guppy. You have the right to put your request out there. You don't have to take what's been handed to you and accept it.
Yep. I think the flexibility, the customization, and one thing that I really want investors to take home with them is the proactive investor wins the day, right? Doing a lot of the work up front, doing research on a lender, research on a property, a deal scenario, whatever the case may be. But if you're out there pursuing the knowledge, pursuing the information, it only makes you that much more of a successful investor. And in turn, private lenders want to work with you.
And do collect your documentation.
Yep.
Collect what you need. Get their deal list. What does it look like? What's the structure of it? Have your LLC already established. Go in there so that you can have this thing, inked in a couple of days. Mm-hmm. Where here's my information. What else do you need?
Yep.
Know where to get it. Respond quickly, and the deal can close and go quickly.
Yeah, another layer of that flexibility is that fast approval process, as you mentioned. And that only gets enhanced if you're organized from square one.
And then stick with your loan officer. They can be your partner for a long time, and the more you do with them, the higher you are on their stack of paper.
Yep.
And that's true. It's not that they don't give everyone the same look and partnership, but for those that are dedicated to making this easy and successful, why wouldn't they? Because they can get you done quickly, go to the top of the stack.
Yep. So I think with that, it looks like the finish line's in sight.
It's a wrap.
Yeah. I would consider the financing and funding theme crushed. So, Suzanne, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to our next guest, our next few topics. This has been a great journey, and I'm looking forward to using this brand new studio we have here at RCN Capital Home Base and continuing to grow uncontested investing with you.
And we've truly put the fun in funding this series. It really has been, I've enjoyed it a lot. I love being part of the process. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Of course, and for our uncontested investing community, don't forget to comment on the videos, some of the important segments that you like, some of the questions that you may have or that you appreciated that we answered for you. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget, we grow together. So if you guys want to like, comment, share, it means the world to us. We will see you all in the next one. For Suzanne Andreessen, I'm Nate Zielinski. We'll see you next time on Uncontested Investing.
See you next time.
Thank you for listening to Uncontested Investing. Questions about today's episode or the podcast? Email podcast@rcncapital.com and make sure to follow REI Inc. magazine on LinkedIn and Facebook and RCN Capital on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. See you all next time.